Another member of your rogues gallery is Henry Kissinger.
Of whose rogues gallery is he not a member? No, Mark Twain said, if you give a man a reputation as an early riser, he can sleep till noon. Kissinger has somewhere or another along the line picked up a reputation as a statesman and peacemaker, a negotiator and sort of miraculous deal and deal maker and bridge builder. I invite people in this piece to consider any instance in which he's left a country or a cause or a problem better off than when he found it. And I also point to what I consider to be a record of crime in his past. I mean, he's been complicit in the commissioning of assassinations and in the covering up of mass murder. And I think actually there are some signs in his own memoirs and his behavior that he enjoys it, that he's a very dangerous person, a war criminal.
And you say you're a social person.
And I give the list of instances where I believe that to be true, and I give them here and now if you like.
Before you do that, you say you're a social person. He is known to be social from time to time. Have you ever come across his
Well,
past?
as a matter of fact, I have twice been on the verge of being introduced to him and broken my usual rule, which is, I think for a journalist, a necessary one. You know, there's no hand one shouldn't shake. One's job is to see everyone and talk to everyone and do everything, but I can't do it with him. I've just had to turn away, and once was rude before doing so to him. In other words, I feel that everyone must have some kind of moral last ditch, and this is mine. I couldn't be polite to him, and so it would be hypocritical to be, as it were, presented. Not that he cares or even notices, I'm sure.
You don't think he notices?
Well, it's difficult to say. He's often shown he's got a very thin skin. I mean, when the Cy Hirsch book came out, he went into a terrific tantrum, if you remember. And he also went into a great tantrum about Walter Isaacson's book, of which this is a review. He's not at all, he likes to think he's tolerant, generous, broad-minded, and when he's on Nightline with no opposition, he likes to crack the odd rather sinister joke, but I don't think, in fact, he does have any talent for introspection or humour or self-doubt or self-criticism, whatever.
We can come back to more on Henry Kissinger. Possibly there's so much to talk about. I want to move on to Mother Teresa.
Aha, yes.
You have a piece in here that was in The Nation in April of 1992, and you call this The Ghoul of Calcutta? Mm-hmm. Mother Teresa?
Mother Teresa, the Ghoul of Calcutta. Yeah. I always had a real doubt in my mind as to whether there really was this saintly person. And if you ask people why do they think Mother Teresa is so great, they'll always say, well, isn't it true that she spends her time always, you know, helping out the poor of Calcutta? But if they really push them, they don't know anything about her at all. They just take it on faith, as saints always are taken. So I went to Calcutta, actually for another reason. I thought, well, I'm there, I'll go and look her up. And I was rather appalled by what I found. I mean, she showed me around her mission, and she announced that the purpose of the mission was to run a campaign in Calcutta, in Bengal, against abortion and contraception. Now, as it happens, I have my doubts about abortion. I'm very squeamish on the subject, but one thing that Calcutta definitely does not need is a campaign waged by an Albanian Catholic missionary against the limitation of the population. And it rather, to me, spoiled the effect of her charitable work, that she was saying, actually, this is not charity, it's religious propaganda. And I think the Vatican policy on population control is calamitous. So that aroused my curiosity anyway. It had been a bit of a disappointment meeting her there. And I didn't like her manners, actually, particularly either, as she went around among, the poor. Then I found her turning up as the defender of the Duvalier family in Haiti, saying how lovely they were and how gentle and beautiful. Then I found her turning up as Charles Keating's personal best friend in the Lincoln Savings and Loan scandal, taking a lot of money from him for a private plane, giving him blessings and crucifixes in return. Then I found her turning up in Albania, where she's a supporter of a very extreme right nationalist party, and quite a few other such things. And I thought, A, I don't like any of these things, singly or together. And second, when does she ever get time for the poor of Calcutta? She's forever on some scumbag's Learjet going around cashing in on everyone else's belief that she's a saint. And I think this is probably how medieval religion was worked.
But let's say,
as a con, people just, you know, you took the faithful as credulous and you reckoned that they would believe whatever you said.
Let me just take her side for purpose of discussion. Let's say that she went to the Duvalier family and got money, went to Charles Keating and got money, and moved it over to the poor. Wouldn't that be charity?
I don't think it's necessary for someone who is supposedly consecrated to the mission of charity, and who's world famous for it, to ever have to beg for money. If she ever wanted it, she knows where to go for it. People would open their pockets and I think their hearts. No, the fact is, I don't even know if she got any money from the Duvaliers. What she was doing was defending them as a dynasty in Haiti, and everyone knows what the record of the Duvalier family is in Haiti. She did get money from Keating, and I actually asked in my piece, you know, would anyone care to say that they know where it's gone? Because she must have known, or should have known, that that money doesn't belong to Keating and doesn't belong to her. It's stolen money. But okay, let her say. But the fact is, she was giving him in return various kinds of absolution in his campaigns, and I think this is because, you know, he started off life as a morals cop. He was another of the prohibitionists. He began his career as an anti-pornography poser. She's evidently, it seems to me, on call for people, dubious characters of this kind. I just thought it was worth pointing out. I can't tell you the mail I got about it. I mean, if you touch the idea of sainthood, especially in this country, people feel you've taken something from them personally. And I'm fascinated because, of course, we like to look down on other religious beliefs as being tribal and superstitious. So we never dare criticize our own.
Over the years, what has brought you the most mail?
That was one. Gosh, my mind suddenly goes blank when I think what the other mailbags. Well, actually, a piece I once wrote about Henry Kissinger was another one. That was in the London Review.
They agree or disagree with it?
People writing that, well, I shouldn't be the one to say, but actually people were writing and saying, I've long wanted someone to write about him in that way. Not to write about him as if he was a great statesman, but as if he was a great criminal.
There's another piece here, was in the Condé Nast Traveler in 1990. And it's about P.J. O'Rourke, and it says, not funny enough. What are you doing writing for the Condé Nast Traveler?
Listen, I'm not in a position to turn anyone down. I'm very proud if anyone ever asks me. In fact, I work part of the time for Condé Nast, more or less all the time. Actually, I write a column for Vanity Fair called Cultural Elite, which appears every month now.
By the way, who's Condé Nast?
Oh, Condé Nast is Condé Nast was an individual, a great publisher and designer. And he started the family of magazines that we associate with Vogue, Vanity Fair, which is its flagship, a travel magazine called Condé Nast Traveler, The New Yorker. In other words, you know, the core of American magazine life, now owned by the Newhouse family.
P.J. O'Rourke is in your Rose Gallery. Who is he?
P.J. O'Rourke is a guy who gets away, in my opinion, with murder. I mean, he's another ex-leftist, 60s radical dropout, wrote very funnily about what it was like being permanently stoned and bummed out and paranoid in the 60s. Then saw the light, put on a collar and tie, became a young Republican, and has been cashing in this chip ever since, and has a terrific sort of following as a humorist for his books of essays. The first one, quite funny, is called Republican Party Reptile. And the next one is called Holidays in Hell, and more recent one is called Give War a Chance. And these sell terribly well among the young, much better than any of my books ever have. And it gets me down. So this is my revenge upon him.
Do you know him?
Yeah, I've met him, sure. And he's actually quite a good guy to hang out with in a bar and so forth. But I've reckoned that he was running on empty with this joke about, I know, I've been there, I've been a radical, now I see how wonderful it would be to be a completely buttoned up, buttoned down Tory. And the joke basically depends on a satire on political correctness. You know. Okay, so people try not to make jokes about AIDS. PJ will make a joke about AIDS. Okay, it's not funny to laugh at cripples. Well, I'll laugh about cripples. And I said, look, in the words of the title of the review, that's quite funny, but it's not funny enough. It's a gentle rebuke.
Where were you born?
Portsmouth, Hampshire, England. Now, I'm a Navy brat, in other words.
What did your dad do?
It's a lifetime naval officer in the service of the King, and indeed of the Empire. And until I was, I don't know, about 12, I wanted to do the same.
Is your dad still alive?
No, alas.
Your mother?
Nope.
How many kids in the family?
Just me and my brother. My brother's a very conservative journalist, writes for a conservative tabloid in England called the Daily Express. He's just, in fact, become its Washington correspondent. He's having been in Moscow for a long time. He's a very brilliant guy, very thoughtful, very good writer, with political views polar opposite of mine. He just arrived in Washington this week, so I'm looking forward to. I'm thinking I'll probably have to give a party or something and say, okay, here's the Hitchens family secret. Now you know everything.
What's his first name?
Peter.
And is the Daily Express the paper that Lord Beaverbrook?
That's right. It was Beaverbrook's flagship. I used to work for it myself, but I had to quit. It was too much for me.
You grew up in Portsmouth, which in Great Britain is located where in the country?
It's on the south coast, and it's, if you could think of the south coast as a sort of line at an angle to Europe, and then there's a small island called the Isle of Wight, which forms a perfect, by protecting a certain area of the coast, it forms a perfect natural harbour, and Portsmouth is where Lord Nelson last set foot on land before joining his ship and going off to Trafalgar, for example. It's always been the home port of the British Navy. It's where the great ships were built. It still is very much in that maritime tradition, and there's a graveyard full of Hitchenses on Portsdown Hill that overlooks it.